I've spent the better part of my career chasing a dream that many deemed impossible, creating a stable quantum tunneling device. Funded by a multi-billion-dollar grant, my project consumed years of my life, countless sleepless nights, and nearly all my sanity. The lab was a fortress of technology, filled with humming machinery and flickering screens, each a testament to the complex calculations and experiments I conducted. The road to this moment was paved with the contributions of countless scientists, physicists, and mathematicians. Nobel laureates, such as Dr. Maria Antonia, whose work on quantum entanglement laid the foundational theories, and Dr. Thomas Schultz, who developed the algorithms necessary for stabilizing quantum states, were pivotal. Nations worldwide, realizing the historical significance of this endeavor, put aside their differences to support the research. Theoretical physicists from Japan, computational experts from Germany, and engineering prodigies from the United States all collaborated, sharing data, resources, and breakthroughs. The science behind the quantum tunneling device was intricate and mind-boggling. At its core, the machine relied on principles of quantum mechanics, particularly the phenomenon of quantum tunneling, where particles pass through a barrier that, according to classical physics, should be insurmountable. Mathematically, this was described by the Schrödinger equation, psi xt equals a kx minus omega t plus b eq kx plus omega t, where psi xt represented the wave function of a particle, and a and b were constants derived from boundary conditions. The real breakthrough came when we managed to manipulate these equations to control not just particles, but entire macroscopic objects. This required an immense amount of computational power and an innovative use of quantum entanglement. The equations governing these interactions were far more complex. H psi equals E, where 8 was the Hamiltonian operator representing the total energy of the system, and E was the energy eigenvalue. Finally, after endless trials and errors, the day came. I stood in front of the massive apparatus, a contraption of coils, wires, and blinking lights, with bated breath. My fingers trembled as I keyed in the final sequence, my mind racing with the possibilities of what lay beyond the portal. Would it open a gateway to a new dimension? A parallel universe? The future? A loud hum filled the room, the machines shaking as they built up power. Then, with a flash of blinding light and a deafening roar, the portal opened. I shielded my eyes, peering through the light as it slowly dimmed, revealing what was on the other side. To my astonishment, the shimmering doorway led to a dimly lit kitchen. The decor was mundane, the kind you'd find in any suburban home. I blinked, my heart still pounding from the adrenaline. I stepped through the portal cautiously, the tiles of the kitchen cool under my feet. The house was silent, the only sound a faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the darkness. I felt a pang of hunger. I hadn't eaten in hours, too engrossed in my work to think about food. My eyes fell on the refrigerator, a stainless steel behemoth that promised nourishment. Driven by a mix of curiosity and hunger, I approached the fridge and opened it. The cool air wafted over me, and the contents glowed invitingly in the dim light. I grabbed a sandwich wrapped in plastic and a can of soda, my stomach growling in anticipation. I unwrapped the sandwich and took a bite, savoring the simple pleasure of food after such an intense day. As I ate, a strange thought crossed my mind. Here I was, a brilliant scientist who had just achieved one of the greatest technological feats in history. And what was I doing? Stealing food from someone's kitchen. I chuckled softly, the absurdity of it all sinking in. I had opened a portal through the fabric of reality itself, only to end up pilfering midnight snacks. I finished my impromptu meal and wiped my hands, suddenly feeling the weight of what I had done. The implications of my discovery were immense, yet here I stood, a thief in the night. I stepped back through the portal, leaving the kitchen just as I found it, the only evidence of my visit, an empty sandwich wrapper and a half-drunk can of soda. Back in my lab, I deactivated the portal, the machinery winding down with a series of clicks and whirs. I slumped into a chair, my mind racing. There were so many questions to answer, so many possibilities to explore. But for now, one thing was clear. Even the most groundbreaking discoveries could lead to the most unexpected and sometimes humbling outcomes. As I sat in the dim glow of my monitors, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Perhaps in the end, all the brilliant minds and vast resources would only ever lead to one simple truth. Scientists, too, get hungry in the middle of the night. In the following weeks, the novelty of our discovery spread through the scientific community like wildfire. Yet, rather than focusing on the monumental implications of our ability to create portals, the scientists involved in the project became strangely obsessed with raiding fridges. We found ourselves fascinated not with new worlds or dimensions, but with the contents of ordinary kitchens. Leftovers, half-eaten sandwiches, and day-old pizza became our spoils. Despite calls from governments and institutions for detailed research and exploration, the allure of these nocturnal forays into random homes was irresistible. The thrill of sneaking through a portal, the quiet hum of a suburban home at night, the soft click of a refrigerator door opening, it was all oddly intoxicating. Soon, more of my colleagues got wind of what we were doing. At first, they were outraged. Linda Rosenberg, a renowned physicist, stormed into the lab one night, furious to find me with a mouthful of someone's leftover spaghetti. "This is a disgrace to our field," she shouted. But then, driven by curiosity, she tried it herself. One bite of a day-old chicken drumstick, and she was hooked. Dr. Ethan Kim, one of the brightest minds in our team, took it a step further. He developed a new equation designed to optimize our fridge raiding expeditions. By factoring in economic disparities and average household food wastage, he theorized that the best fridges to raid were in poorer neighborhoods, where families struggling to make ends meet often cooked more than they could eat to ensure leftovers. Ft equals into T dot P dot dt, where Ft was the fridge quality over time, Q was the economic quote was the population density, and WL was the wastage level. Debates among scientists regarding the ethical implications and the mathematics behind our midnight raids led to what some jokingly called the grand unified theory of fridge raiding. We held seminars, drafted papers, and even had heated discussions about whether our actions could be justified by the sheer brilliance of the science involved. The best meals were often the most difficult to obtain. We discovered that raiding the coolers of semi-truck drivers on long hauls offered a surprising bounty. The taste of sandwich meat, wraps, cut vegetables, fruit, and hummus being cooled by a DC-powered $80 mini fridge was unexpectedly delicious. The freshness of the food, paired with the novelty of the setting, made these raids particularly enticing. However, the challenge lay in not waking the truckers sleeping in their supercabs. One night, I and a colleague, Dr. Olivia Thompson, attempted a raid on a semi-truck parked at a rest stop. We were almost successful, having managed to sneak several wraps and some hummus when a loud creak gave us away. The trucker, bleary-eyed and disoriented, stumbled out of his cab. We barely escaped back through the portal before he could see us. The next day, we were horrified to find the same trucker on a conspiratorial radio show, claiming that aliens had stolen his food to study the eating habits of humanity before their invasion. His account was filled with wild details about glowing portals and shadowy figures, fueling a whole new wave of paranoia and intrigue. Then, one fateful night, when everyone was supposed to be home getting rest, an intern named Trevor decided to use the machine himself. Starving and unable to resist the temptation, he dialed in the coordinates and stepped through the portal into a stranger's kitchen. Unfortunately for Trevor, the homeowner was awake. Shock turned to rage as the owner confronted him, and a physical altercation ensued. An emergency internal investigation was conducted with the very best in medical PhDs in the world to help us assess what happened to Trevor. In Trevor's unscheduled encounter with resident Danny Zeal of Wichita, Kansas, 2:32 a.m., the medical report on Trevor read as follows. Judging by the extensive periorbital ecchymosis and significant paranasal swelling, it appears he has sustained a periorbital hematoma, along with a nasal fracture. The contusion and edema around the orbit suggest a substantial force of impact, while the epistaxis and palpable deformity of the nasal bridge indicate a displaced fracture, likely involving the nasal septum. In plain English, Trevor received a black eye and broken nose. This incident led to a new rule: no raiding without supervision. The Council of Senior Scientists enforced it strictly, hoping to prevent any more mishaps. Despite our precautions, word eventually got out about what we were doing. The public reaction was immediate and furious. News outlets ran sensational stories, and social media exploded with outrage. Labor strikes and political unrest seemed trivial compared to the backlash we faced. Protesters gathered outside the lab, chanting slogans and demanding we stop this stupid shit now. They called us dog f***ers, pieces of shit, and worse than a college roommate, and other unsavory names, accusing us of violating the sanctity of their homes and taking advantage of their struggles. The public frenzy was relentless, painting us as nothing more than overeducated moochers, total bags, and stupid sons of bitches. One child, 14 years old, Melanie Labarche of Montreal, Quebec, who was this year's science fair winner for her experiments in humanely harvesting manganese from the ocean floor without damaging the ecosystem. She turned in her first place award with a curt letter to the science community, citing our recent scandal as the reason why she, and I quote, "don't want to be associated with you assholes." And that was that. That was the proverbial straw that you can guess the rest. Under immense pressure, the project was shut down. The portals were sealed, the machinery dismantled, and the lab doors locked. The dream of exploring new dimensions and unlocking the mysteries of the universe had been eclipsed by our own human weaknesses, and the simple, undeniable fact that, in the end, we were just as flawed and hungry as everyone else. As I packed up my belongings, I couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of it all. We had pushed the boundaries of science only to be undone by our primal urges. Perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, the real lesson was not about the vast potential of quantum mechanics, but about the simple truth that, no matter how far we advance, we are still bound by our most basic human desires. Then it hit me. My fridge was empty at home and I needed something to eat.